Here, obviously preparing for a really good Rutgers team here on Thursday. Big Ten opener. Tough, really tough, well-coached, older team, a lot of familiar guys. They're now fully healthy, really for the first time all year. Held Indiana to 48. I think they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. Certainly one of the best we'll play. And it's always very physical with Steve's team. Again, he does a terrific job, and it's going to be a great challenge, a fun challenge for us at 7 o'clock on Thursday.
Chris, what specifically sticks out to you about Rutgers' defense? What do they do especially well?
What his teams have always done. They're disruptive. They turn you over. They're great on the glass, on both offense and defensive glass. They're long. They're physical. Really good. They have a terrific big who is now kind of grown into his own as a third-year player. And they've just got great positional size and length, so allows them to be really good.
And then just want to ask about Bryce. Had a tough game at Duke, but bounced back along with some other guys. What have you seen from him in terms of just persistence, being able to bounce back from a game like that?
Yeah, he's going to have to continue to do that all season. He's going to get a lot of attention, as he did against Duke. Got a lot of defensive attention. He's going to have to respond to that and make adjustments, and I know he will.
Yeah, Coach, another one of the top 10, I think, offensive rebounding teams and just average in the country. But it seemed like you guys kind of handled that challenge pretty well against Duke. Obviously, didn't get the win, but the rebounding numbers looked good in that game. Does that give you confidence going into some of these games with teams like that, physical Big Ten teams, that your team's already done that in the past? Yeah,
I think that's one of the challenges in front of us in this particular game is the glass, for sure. Both offensively and defensively, that is definitely one of the challenge. So I'll be interested to see if we can do that over the course of a number of teams that are going to challenge us on that end. But certainly Rutgers is one of the best offensive rebounding teams we'll play. Duke was as well, but Rutgers is right there.
I think you mentioned Clifford, their big man as well. Have you seen him take a big step up this year? I mean, he was really good last year, but even better this season.
Yeah, I think you really saw it last year. Towards the second half of last year, you were like, and he was a 5-star recruit from the Northeast, so you knew, a kid who's a 5-star recruit, going into the back half of his sophomore year, you're just saying, okay, that he's going to be a really good player. You even saw glimpses of it as a freshman. So they do a great job with him, and he's gotten a lot better. He's one of the best bigs in the country, certainly one of the best bigs in the Big Ten.
You've talked throughout the season about the year assistants having to remind you, like when you have 4 freshmen on the court together. Are you getting slightly more comfortable with that, or what is your level of concern now when you look out there and you see 3 or maybe 4 freshmen together compared to the start of the year?
I think as the season goes on, maybe we'll be more willing to do that for longer stretches, Adam. If we, hopefully stay healthy, I don't know that puts them in the best position to be successful. And I think that's what you're trying to do as a coach right now, is also figure out how to put our team in the best place, but put them in the best place. And that's against a really good teams. That's a lot of inexperience to put out there together.
And when you've worked on trying to fit all these pieces together, obviously you're going to rely on the things you see in practice and knowing your own players. But have you taken in advice from any sort of outside sources or outside points of reference as far as how to make so many different pieces fit together?
It's a good question. I think in Maui, I talked to a number of coaches who, again, one of them had 11 new players. So, his experience was even more significant than ours. So, I think you're always trying to pick the brain of other coaches and coaches that you respect, but just coaches in general. So that's probably been more than what I've done, as opposed to, picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, talk to me about this."
You were talking on the radio show a few minutes ago about entering Big Ten play with freshmen freshmen having to step up. What have you seen in the past? I know you haven't had a freshman class like this one, but freshmen adjusting to Big Ten and what it takes.
It takes a minute, to be honest with you. I think it takes a minute. I think it's hard for them right now to appreciate, and we'll do our best, but it's hard for them to appreciate the intensity and the toughness required in a Big Ten game. It just is. So they really need game experience to be able. We'll do our very best, and we will communicate that to them and show it to them on film, but it's a whole nother level when you're out there in live action.
And your guys that have played in other conferences, Power 5, high-level games, obviously the Big Ten is different. How do you see that adjustment going, even though they've played at a high level? They've probably played some Big Ten teams before, but maybe not consistently in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a huge difference between the Big 12 and the Big Ten. I think there's a lot of more similarities than there are differences. So that, I think Tanner and our freshmen will need to know. Everybody will. Everybody will need to be reminded of what this step up in level is, for sure. All of us, but certainly our freshmen and Tanner.
Chris, along those lines, this isn't your first rodeo. You understand the phenomena of it's December, people are thinking football.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
Does that, you could look at that two ways. One, the pressure's a little bit off your guys, especially younger guys. They're kind of under the radar. The other side, attendance and getting your guys exposure.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting dynamic because at Butler it was very different, and I think you hear about that from maybe guys who have coached at different schools and what their appreciation is for that. I think you're so in the midst of it right now that that's not necessarily my focus. And I've great appreciation for where I'm at and kind of how consumed this place is with athletics in general, but certainly at the forefront of that is football. And I can appreciate that in a lot of ways, and I do, because I in some ways I feel the same way. But you're so in the midst of, preparing your team, trying to grow your freshmen, grow your young kids. That's what you're consumed with. If we consistently perform at a high level, all that will come. Basketball's such a long season that, I just don't get worked up about, anything outside of how we're performing, this time of year, because it's such a lot. We got a lot of games in front of us, a lot of great Big Ten games here at home that we're going to play starting on Thursday night and then picking back up in January. So
you anticipate crowds increasing? They always do.
They always
seen
do.
It, right?
Yeah, that's what I've seen. That's been my experience here. Is unless we're playing a Villanova or a Duke. Cincinnati was almost a sellout. Those games, and I've said, I'm trying to provide those every year. Sometimes it's hard. Maui made it difficult this year, but I want to do that every year for our fans. Some type of, high-level program. We're in talks right now to provide that. Something in November, December, just to get your fans, as we're in the midst of this heavy football season, to get your fans engaged. We just weren't able to do it this year.
A little bit different here. I don't know how much relationship you have with Ryan Day, but can you imagine the pressure of you lose one game and what comes with that on that side of things versus, you experience it a little bit in March.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know if you've ever talked to him about it or if you just try to walk in those shoes.
Yeah, no, I think, I think the reality is, there is a point at which, the pressure can feel overwhelming for any coach. And I think you have to have certain specific strategies in place, we all do, to manage that in the best way and to give yourself the best chance to remain healthy and best for your team and for your program. And from what I've observed, Ryan's a friend. From what I've observed with him, he does a terrific job of that. I think the noise and the attention, coaches are focused on what's most important, and that is coaching their teams and being there for their players and doing the absolute best job we can do. And I know, I'm excited about this next opportunity for him and for that program. I know they have a great challenge in front of them with Georgia, but they've earned the right to be in this position, and it's clear based on their body of work. I'm excited about that for him.
Chris, I'm kind of bouncing off what Pat was talking about. Physically, Big Ten play is a grind that most of these guys have never experienced. But mentally, how do you keep them engaged and not getting frustrated when they are having to go up against these big bodies in that physical play every night?
Yeah, I think it becomes a real... You're really mindful of that when it's one right after the other in January and February and March. I mean, you're mindful of all of it, the physical toll, the mental toll, the going from playing, at Rutgers to at Purdue to, on down the line. It's a lot. And I think the reality is you realize as a coach, you're not going to be, your team's not going to be their best every night. And there's going to be some that are going to be very difficult to win. The ones that are in front of you that you do have a chance to win, you want to get, but more than anything, you want your team to grow as the year goes on. In this league right now, we've said it over a number of years. I mean, the teams that win it typically lose 5 to 6 times out of 20 games. So no one goes without blemishes in a league like this, and I think that long-term perspective is required.
And then how important is it to have something like Maui when you guys have already done the back-to-back against good teams to kind of give them a glimpse into, hey, this is what it's going to look like, once we hit that January and February?
It's really important. I think it's really important to have that 3-game stretch. We played, I think the most probably Big Ten-like team we played was probably San Diego State, maybe Texas Tech too, in terms of just the physical older bodies. San Diego State was so old and they were so physical that it did remind me a lot of that, of a Big Ten team. So I think that experience was really good.
Would love your thoughts just in general on Caleb McConnell, and if maybe playing San Diego State and Texas Tech maybe help prepare your younger guards, guys that are going to handle the ball, for dealing with somebody as disruptive as McConnell's going to be.
Yeah, he's an elite defender. He is an elite defender, and going into, I think, his fifth or sixth year. Elite defender. Great length. Last year we had a chance to kind of ice the game there, and he made an incredible block on Malachi's transition dunk attempt. And it's not just him, though. They have a number of disruptive guys, but it begins with him. And I think, to your point, the experience of playing those games in Maui against all 3 teams that were disruptive helped, but certainly San Diego State and Texas Tech.
And then kind of a follow-up from something I asked about Bryce the other day. You said you didn't want to let any struggles on the offensive end carry over to the defensive end. So if you remove his offense, what areas of the game do you think, since the season started, so defense, game prep, maybe conditioning, have you seen the biggest strides for him?
Oh, I think just... I think some of it's just overall awareness. I think he's taken strides in that area, but he's got a ways to go. He's got a ways to go in that area, but I just think that he up to this point right now has been very intentional about wanting to get better in that area, and that's a credit to him. And if that continues to be the case throughout the year, then I think we're going to continue to see progress.
Any specific areas, like defense or like conditioning, or just kind of all that?
Defense, yeah, defense and conditioning. I think the 2 areas that his conditioning is good. It's good. It's really, he's really made strides in that for sure.
Chris, you talked about the physicality of Big Ten play and just sort of how you need to get the freshmen acclimated. I'm just curious, what's sort of the balance like as a coach of seeing them make mistakes and not necessarily having a quick hook? What's sort of the balance of keeping them in the game as they make mistakes to get that experience, or maybe taking them out? Because, I mean, as you were saying on the radio show, wins sort of matter.
Effort is usually the line of delineation on that. You know, if their effort's not good enough on the offensive or defensive end, then, you know, they're coming out.
And how did a team like Texas Tech or San Diego State or anything like that sort of just prepare you for this test come Thursday?
We'll see. You know, we'll see. I think, again, I think probably these guys are the best defensive team. I think these guys and maybe San Diego State are the two best defensive. No disrespect towards Texas Tech because they're a really good defensive team too, but just the physicality and how disruptive Rutgers is, I think is very similar to San Diego State.
One more pass.
Because we're talking a lot about rebounding, and you talked the other day about Zed and how you think when he's potentially a top 5 rebounder in the country when it comes to the offensive glass.
When he's playing hard.
When he's playing hard, right. What is it when he's playing hard that makes him that? Because he, you know, for his size and everything, he is going against guys that are a little bit bigger than him. What makes him that when he's playing hard?
Long arms and a big body that can wedge rebound. He has a really good feel of getting to the weak side of the glass. Again, he's going to go against, I think, as good an athlete as he'll play against all year this Thursday night. But he's got a good feel for getting to the weak side of the offensive glass. He's got obviously a big frame. And then again, you know, when you have a 7'2" wingspan, you really play much bigger than 6'8", and we know that's been the case for him, you know, throughout his career. Anything else? Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.